Here we go, folks. This is Jon B, 1DFS. It is 10/21/2021. Coming to you to talk about today's NBA DFS slate. Yesterday's 11-gamer was madness. It just went and went and went, and some crazy things happened out in Boston and with the Knicks and with the Celtics that were totally unexpected. Jaylen Brown was a total fade for me, of course, and many others, but it definitely came out to where you pretty much had to have him if you were going to end up in the top couple of percent. Wasn't a winning day for me, but I did recoup about 60% of my entry fees. So anytime you're not skunked, I guess it's better than getting skunked. So interestingly, it's another day and better slate, I think, with only 3 games. So some big names on the board today. I guess we'll see kind of how it goes. That's what happens in DFS. You're not going to win every day. You're not going to have a positive ROI every single day. 2 days ago went well. Today with only 3 games too, and it's 4 o'clock Central Time. The likelihood that we'll get to all 3 games during this stream before I have to run and do something is high. So stick with me. It will be a pretty maybe a concise show. I don't know. We'll talk about the matchups. We'll talk about the players. We'll see what's going on. We'll discuss a little bit about what next week looks like and what kind of things I hope to accomplish over the weekend. I don't think that I'm going to be doing the show on Saturday and Sundays. We will definitely do it Monday through Friday, regardless. But unless something special is happening, Saturday and Sunday probably going to be better spent with the family and doing projects and things at home that need to be done. Unless it's crazy. Timberwolves debuted last night. Everybody knows I'm from Minnesota, so it was so crazy. It was a fun game. We were up by 37 at one point. Anthony Edwards is a star, like it or not. Not saying anything about LaMelo, but Anthony Edwards is a stud, man. He came out, he I don't know, it's hard to explain, but he one time hit 2 threes in a row really quick, looked at the other player's bench and went, "You better call timeout because I'm hot." So very fun, very interesting. The fans were going bananas. Totally a good time. Timberwolves are back, man. Now they're not going to win any championships anytime soon, but look for us in the low part of the ranking, maybe just outside the lottery to maybe 7th seed. Who knows? It depends. We played a bad team in Houston, which I think everybody knows, but we just destroyed them like they were kind of a high school team. So that was sort of bad for me because I did have Kevin Porter Jr. in a bunch of my lineups, thinking that he would come out and kind of, show off his athleticism, but he did not. I think he finished somewhere, and don't quote me on this, but maybe around 14 fantasy points or something, or FanDuel points, depending, but that's okay. That's okay. So we did the best we could with the information we had. After tonight, I think every team will have played, so we'll have some minor information about the season. So we can kind of update some data. Right now I'm still using last year's data to do some projections, to look at some numbers, but it shouldn't be too crazy. I don't have any information on most of the rookies yet, that kind of stuff. The model needs to come a long way before we can actually say, okay, this is what's happening. So that's okay too. We'll do the best we can with what we have, and we'll go forward from there. It just is what it is. So reminder, hang on one second. Okay. Reminder that I'm staring at least 3 monitors and a camera, and so I'm not kind of having a seizure. I'm looking at all kinds of different data, and actually, you'd think I would have been ready for this, but apparently I'm a little bit not. So let's get some. Oh, there we go. Get some information on the screen here so I can feed you guys the right information. 3 games tonight, starting 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern. First game, Dallas at Atlanta. Let's see what the odds look like on this bad boy. Let's see. Vegas has it right about 225 combined total points, so that should be pretty good. I mean, I think this is the one that kind of everybody's going to tune into because you get sort of your Luka Doncic and Trae Young matchup, and that's kind of what everybody wants to watch, myself included. I fully plan on watching this game. It should be a blast. It should be a good time. We'll see who does what and who can control who, but those 2 players, they're superstars at a young age. Obviously, Trae Young has had a little more success last year in the playoffs. But in the Eastern Conference, that's not unexpected for me. I still think Luka is the dominant player out of the two. I still think Luka will eventually be the face of the league, at least for a period of time. Some of your guys that will exit in the next 3 or 4 years will open up that space for him. If we're talking about maybe like LeBron and Steph, when they retire, there'll be some new faces to look at. So obviously Giannis, he's, as far as domination goes on both ends, he's the guy right now. And he'll continue to be, but I really think that you're going to see even more Luka, even more Trae Young's faces on things that are labeled NBA going forward. So very cool, and it's going to be a cool matchup. You know, to me, I'm just looking at the Dallas lineup. It doesn't look like much has changed. They're starting Dwight Powell at center. Very interesting move, but that'll definitely garner them some extra athleticism, at least in the starting unit. And maybe that's a move because, you know, they're playing against Collins and Capella on the other end, and they just need that little bit of extra athleticism. So just looking at that matchup, Trae Young definitely in, Clint Capella definitely in. At one time, I know they were questionable, probably a couple days ago now, but you know, that's going to be interesting. I'm not seeing any other real surprises in the starting lineup for Atlanta. Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, and Capella. For Dallas, you're still looking Doncic, Hardaway, DFS, Porzingis, Kristaps, and then Dwight Powell. So should be an interesting matchup. Should be a high-scoring affair, potentially. And maybe there'll be some sort of antics at the end, which will be awesome. Maybe like some back and forth, crazy like 3-pointers to go up one in the last minute, like back and forth. So I'm kind of hoping for some of that stuff. Like I said, 225 is the combined line, so there shouldn't be a lack of offense in this one. It looks to me like, well, let's see, 225 spread. Okay. Looks like Dallas are slight dogs in this one, although I think Dallas is the better team. So I guess we'll see kind of what happens on that one, and then we'll take a look. So hang with me 1 second here. I'm gonna get my sheet up here, and we'll take a look. There is my sheet. Now I get my face up here. Okay. Oh, and maybe that's where I need to be, is up there. I've been down here kind of, but that covers some data. So we'll take a look here and see, maybe that'll work better. You can see me up in the corner there instead of down in the middle. A little bit easier to look at, maybe. Let me pull the game up here. Let's see. I don't need to select all. Let's see. Dallas, Atlanta. Okay. Oh, right off the bat, you can kind of see. Oh, did I forget to do that? Hang with me here. Number. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Let me see here. Now let's go to team. Break it down that way. I think today we are going to start with Dallas. Let's pull Dallas up specifically. Get rid of Atlanta here. Okay. There we go. Dallas. Okay. Taking a look at Dallas here now, like I said, there's going to be some players here where I don't have a lot of information. Ja'Cory McLaughlin, I don't know him. He might be a two-way. He might be in the G League. Same with Morui. Forgive me for butchering that. If you have any idea what I'm talking about, let me know. Let me see here. Make sure to, real quick before we get started, to subscribe to the page, hit that like button, notification bell. That stuff is important for me to get started here. Obviously, I'm very small. It's just me in my office, and so not a lot of following yet. But hopefully, in the next couple of months that builds, and we kind of pass through our growing pains, and things get a little bit better as far as that goes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm having fun doing this. I need to be doing this every day for my lineups anyway. So broadcasting it is pretty nice also because, as you may have garnered, I'm a little bit of a yabberer, according to my wife, and so I like to talk a lot. And this gives me some outlet to be able to talk about these kind of things while still being able to kind of focus on doing them at the same time. So that's pretty cool. It's a pretty good deal. But make sure, like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. If you don't like it, let me know why. You can find me on Twitter at Jon B1DFS, at Jon B1DFS, Jon Bone DFS. That's just kind of how that worked out. So, pun intended, I guess. I really don't know. Okay, let's take a look at the game here. Obviously, we know that Luka was a dominator last year. He's going to be a dominator going forward. It just is what it is. There isn't anybody that has any question about that, barring some kind of an insane injury. 51.1 fantasy points per game last year on 34.3 minutes, 36% usage. That means dude has the ball in his hand when it goes up to the hoop or when it is involved in the scoring. 36% of the time, so almost always. 4.6 value is really more like a 6 value, but his salary is notoriously high, which is fine. This is the kind of guy like Giannis, where paying up for him is almost a requirement, at least in my opinion, and then filling in with value around him. That's really the way to go generally. He's got to score as little as 38 in order to bust. Dude has usually over 30 fantasy points at the half, so him busting is almost never. You really only need 50 and a half fantasy points for him in order to make his value worth it, and he averages 51. So the likelihood that he's going to hit what you need to get out of him is high. He needs 63 to boom. That means that he's basically just gone on beyond value plus 10 or whatever. I think maybe my model has it at 8. But either way, dude's crazy. He's going to keep being crazy. 1.49 fantasy points per minute. You're not going to do much better than Luka when it comes to these, unless his salary is like $16,000. But it looks to me like it's about $11,000. I'd love to see him about 10.6, but at $11,000, he's still going to end up played. One of the real things on this team that you're going to have to keep your eye on, what are you going to get from Porzingis? Dude is perpetually injured. Dude doesn't play, not up to the level that he could play. He's like 7'3". He should be putting up Luka kind of numbers, although totally different player, totally different type of game. And obviously, if you have another guy on your team who has a 36% usage rate, you're going to have the ball in your hands less as a second option. But dude hasn't stepped up as a second option, in my opinion. He really plays the game more like a fourth option. That bothers me. You have Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a good shooter, can shoot the lights out when he wants to, but he's the one that acts like the second option on this team. And he's the one that sort of stands out as to who you're going to get points from after Luka. It's really interesting. If I had Porzingis on my team, I would have a lot of sets set up for Porzingis. Luka's going to garner a double team. Porzingis should be averaging like 25 points a game. He does not. 35.95 fantasy points per game, but 30.9 minutes when he's in. His usage 26.5. That's second on the team. Don't get me wrong, but when it comes down to it, Kristaps has to step up, in my opinion. 1.16 fantasy points per minute is great, but dude plays like 7 games a year, it feels like. Now, I know that that's hyperbole and not accurate. However, you need to get more out of Porzingis. If you're the coach of that team now, who the frick knows what Jason Kidd is going to do on this team, because Rick Carlisle was predictable. We have a long history of Rick Carlisle in the NBA. We kind of know what we're going to get from him. Dude is a basketball mastermind. Whether he has a lottery team or whether he's deep in the playoffs, you know what you're going to get out of Rick Carlisle, and I think that's why it was so easy for someone else to say, hey, we want Rick Carlisle right away. There's politics behind the situation as to what led to Rick Carlisle being dismissed or leaving, however you want to look at that or whoever you want to believe. But I'm not sure Jason Kidd was the answer. On paper, on the face of it, hey, Jason Kidd, Mav, great. It looks good. It feels good. I'm not sure that it's going to be good. We're going to have to really see what he can do with that offense. Obviously, you got to start just by putting the ball in Luka's hands and letting him go. But we'll see what kind of success rate that leads to. Real quick, back to Porzingis. He's only $7,000. He might be worth taking a flyer on. He has to score 28 or less in order to really bust. I think you're gonna get that. 35.5 is his sort of what you really need out of him. 43 would be considered the boom for him. I really think you're gonna get somewhere probably low to mid 30s out of him. So for $7,000, there's a chance he hits 5x value. At $7,000, the likelihood he'll hit value is good. What his ownership looks like, I really don't have any idea. I don't have my ownership figured out yet, but I will shortly. Next week is going to be a big week as far as additions to the model, so I will work on some of that this weekend, and we'll go from there. Looking down at Tim Hardaway, like I said, he plays like the second option, although he doesn't necessarily put up numbers like a second option, but he's priced accordingly at $5,000. Do I wish he was $4,500? Absolutely, I wish he was $4,500. That could really, really help. But at 5,000, 24 fantasy points per game. This is a guy who, came off the bench for part of the year, started for part of the year. 28.4 minutes per game on average. Toward the end, he was playing definitely north of 30, 32, 33. Usage rate, third on the team, 23%. Actually, fourth on the team behind Boban. Problem is, Boban only averages about eight minutes a game. So, totally different crew. But 4.8 value. Tim Hardaway gets close to value every night. The problem is he's only a 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy. The reason for that, of course, is because he's on the floor with Luka and Kristaps, who dominate the ball. So it's going to be hard from him. The good news is that if you get over 23 FanDuel points per minute out of Tim Hardaway Jr., you're successful. You need 28 from him is what you're looking for. 33 would be considered a boom. But, I mean, if you play Tim Hardaway Jr. at 5,000, the likelihood that he's going to hit value, especially against a team like Atlanta, it's going to be high in my opinion. Going down the list here, there's some definite differences. Moses Brown, I don't know really how they're going to use him, what it's going to look like. Reggie Bullock, let me see. Let's look at injuries on him too. Let's see. What do we have for injuries on Dallas before I start recommending players that are going to sit? No injuries on the injury report for Dallas. That's amazing for them, although I expect to see Kristaps on the injury report after about the first 2 minutes. So I'm kidding, but that seems to be kind of how he plays. Hilarious, if you ask me. But no injuries as of right now going in. Keep your eye on the news. Lock is in 2 hours, so you never know what's going to happen with NBA DFS in the last 10 seconds before lock, where everybody gets screwed over. But it is what it is. That's part of the fun. Going down the list, Jalen Brunson, 25 minutes per game. Reggie Bullock, 30 minutes per game. So I guess we'll see how they use him this year, especially considering that he DFS is in the starting lineup. Dorian Finney-Smith, 32 minutes per game, 12% usage rate, of course, is very low, but he does hit value, looks like almost every night. Problem is he's a 0.69 fantasy point guy, and you got to get at least 25.38 points from him in order to really make him worth it. But his bust number is only 29.5. So if Kristaps is having a weird night and DFS has the ball in his hands a lot, the chances that he's going to get to 29.5, I'm not exactly sure what the chances are, maybe 20% or something, but they're definitely not that bad. So I would hold on to DFS in the back of your mind. $4,300 salary could make him an excellent fantasy play. Of course, you have Maxi Kleber, who I love Kleber, dude. He's a guy I go to quite a bit, 26.8 minutes a game. His salary is always low at $4,000. He hits big shots. His value, is not that bad. Let me take a look here. 4.4 value. 0.66 fantasy points per minute, but here's a guy who usually fills the gaps at a low salary. So if you're looking at him, if Maxi gets anywhere over 20 fantasy points, you're successful with him. You're looking to get about 23 from him. I think you can get there on most nights. Now, I guess we'll see kind of DFS, what they're doing with him, Jalen Brunson, those kind of guys, and see what goes happen. Frank Ntilikina, I'm not sure he'll play much. He might be like a garbage time type guy. But here's the thing, and another guy mentioned it this morning. If Jason Kidd likes a player, he might end up just playing a player because, hey, I like the way he plays, regardless of the numbers or the fit. That's where you could see a guy like Trey Burke, who's at the minimum cost. That's where you could see a guy like him just go crazy on minutes. I mean, just because Jason Kidd is Jason Kidd. So it is a little bit of a little bit of an unknown there with Jason as far as what you may or may not get. You only need 22, really 22 out of Trey Burke to get value. So look at that guy too. Keep your eyes open. I don't think Dwight Powell is going to get you 40 fantasy points per minute. You need 23 in order for him to make sense. And I don't know how many minutes Willie Cauley-Stein will get versus Dwight Powell, depending on the situation and the matchups and so forth. So keep your eye on some of those guys. But realistically, if I'm looking at Dallas, I'm Luka Doncic. Kristaps, like I said, at 7,000, you could take a flyer on. Tim Hardaway Jr. at 5,000 could be a good play. Like I said, I like DFS. And Maxi Kleber, if you're really out of options and you need to fill in kind of a low salary spot at 4,000, he's kind of a go-to for a lot of folks. So I'm not starting Dwight Powell at center tonight. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get. I really don't know what's going to happen with Jason Kidd. So there's a lot of question marks here. As far as that goes, I think that wraps up Dallas. Let me go back here and take a look. We'll pull up the other guys and see what's going on with Atlanta. Well, Atlanta could be really interesting also because who the heck knows what's happening there. Like I said, starting lineup, Trae Young, Bogdan, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, and Clint Capella. So let's take a quick look here. Looks like you might end up with more options here than on Dallas specifically. Let's see. I love Trae Young tonight at 9,600. He's definitely not the 11,000 that Doncic is. Will he get 60 fantasy points? Who knows? I mean, it's totally possible, but the likelihood in my mind is probably not. 33.7 minutes a game. Definitely 33 usage rate. That's first on the team by far. It's not even close. Similar value to Luka as far as 4.6. Generally speaking, that's because, again, his salary is very high. 1.3 fantasy points per minute. Definitely lower than Luka's 1.49 fantasy points per minute, but definitely at $1,400 cheaper. That's not that big of a disparity. Looking at 45, you have to get 45 out of Trae for him to be worth it. 56 is his boom, but if you get anything more than 34.5, you could consider that a successful play. Now, that may not be a play that you win money on, but you could definitely, like I said, consider it a successful play if you get 34.5 or better. Clint Capella, John Collins, pretty interchangeable minutes-wise, about 30 minutes per game. Usage rate for Collins slightly higher than Capella. Capella's value play is definitely higher at 1.26 fantasy points per game. Lining up with Dwight Powell or against Dwight Powell, it's going to be interesting kind of what you get out of him, and it's going to depend on if Powell has taken a step forward or not. As far as Capella goes, you need 46 out of him to boom. Are you going to get 46 out of Capella? I would say the likelihood is slim. 40 out of Collins is more likely, but you need 37.75 out of Capella for him to be a worth play. You only need 33.25 out of Collins. To me, Collins is the play out of the two. I'm probably still going to play some Capella, but probably only in between 10 and 15% of my lineups, maybe about 12%. I love Bogdan, of course. Bogdan is a guy, 28.4 fantasy points per minute on 29.7 minutes. Of course, 0.96 fantasy points per minute, less than a point per minute. I don't love playing those guys, but with a new season, it's really going to be kind of interesting what ends up happening. 4.6 average value, usage rate 21.3, not much different than Collins and Capella. They've spread the ball around a lot. You're going to need 32.5 out of him to make it worth it. And 39 is his boom. Do I think the likelihood that those numbers are realistic for Bogdan? I do think the likelihood is there. Now, tonight it's going to matter how many minutes does he get, because you're going to have Herter, who I always call Kevin Huerter. So if I say Huerter, don't make fun of me. Or do. I guess I don't care. But I like that guy. I always play him. I don't always play him, but I definitely play him in a percentage of my lineups because he's the kind of guy that can just have a hot night. 30.8 minutes per game for Huerter. Cam Reddish could be a little bit of sort of an X factor on this team because who knows, is he going to get that 28 minutes or not? I really don't know. DeLon Wright, similar 28 minutes. DeAndre Hunter, similar 29.5 minutes. Now, Hunter's a guy who's in the starting lineup, so the chances that his minutes will be more like 32, 33, 34 are higher. And at 0.84 fantasy points per minute, that might be worth it. Looking back real quick at DeLon Wright, 0.97 fantasy points per minute on 28 minutes per game. The question is, you can't have every single player playing 28 minutes per game because you're going to run out of minutes. Obviously, it's a different team than last year. There's guys you have to fit minutes for. Probably not as many minutes for Solomon Hill. I don't imagine he'll play 21 minutes a game. I imagine he'll play somewhere around 16. Same with TLC, who's last year played 18, but probably this year will play more like 16 as well, especially with the likelihood that a lot of these guys you've got to find minutes for. Now, who am I putting on the bench out of Hunter and Wright and Reddish and Huerter and some of these guys? I'm not sure, but I think Huerter and Hunter are the guys that are going to get more minutes. Lou Williams, 193 million years old, so I'm not sure he'll get 22 minutes per game. It's more likely in my mind, unless he kind of has a resurgence, it's likely he'll get more like 18 minutes per game to provide more minutes for some of these other guys. Later on, in a week or two, I'm going to have a minutes model built to where we can really project the minutes based on matchups. And have that contribute a little bit more to our total projection. So we'll put some work into that maybe this weekend or early next week, maybe Monday, and we'll see what we end up with there. Definitely expect some tweaks to the model here in the next maybe week to 2 weeks. But going forward, for now, we're going to use the information that we have. Let's look at injuries. Okay. Lou Williams is listed as questionable day-to-day. I'm not sure what that means as far as whether he'll play. Gallo, day-to-day also. I don't expect Gallo to play. He's another one of these guys like Kristaps that just likes to be injured. So I think he finds ways to say that he's sore or whatever, but dude doesn't play as much as he should. Jalen Johnson is probable for the season opener. I don't have any information on him yet, of course, but we will in about 2 weeks. And Okongwu is still sidelined. So no surprises there. Man, they're going to have to fit some Gorgui Dieng in there. Everybody knows I love me some Gorgui Dieng. Dude played for the Timberwolves for many years, one of the best guys in the league, does a lot for his home country of Senegal, and he's like a prince or something over there, so he's like not to be messed with, and he'll tell other players that, hey, I'm a prince, get out of my face, and then he'll make them. So I love him as kind of a mild-mannered enforcer. Whether you're going to get to him in fantasy, probably not. Slim to none, in my opinion, but I do love Gorgui, and I wish him all kinds of success. So look for Lou Williams probably to sit tonight. You're going to get a lot out of Huerter and Hunter. Like I said, Gallo out, and so not a huge surprise there. Maybe you'll get a little extra TLC tonight, maybe 20 minutes instead of 16 to 18. I don't really know. It's going to be interesting what the rotations come out and look like, and if they're able to maintain some of what they did at the end of last season. Personally, I don't think that Atlanta's going to be as good as people imagine them to be. If you look at how bad they were the first, 2/3 of last year. Obviously, there was a coaching change and some things happened, but can you capture lightning in a bottle twice? I would say probably not, although I do expect them to be a fun team to watch. I don't expect them to make a deep run into the playoffs again like they did last year. I think much of that was sort of, like I said, lightning in a bottle. Not much you can do about it. It just is what it was. It's kind of reminded me a little bit of how way back previous to Steph, when there was the Baron Davis Golden State Warriors, and they'd make the playoffs again and somehow as an 8th seed, like destroy the first seed Dallas Mavericks and, send Dirk into a tizzy and whatever. Lightning in a bottle. That's what I call it. That's what it is. Not reliable. You can't win a championship with it. It is what it is. So, in my opinion, don't look for Atlanta. Now, of course, if there's haters watching, whatever, and they love Atlanta, whatever, more power to you. But don't look for Atlanta to make a huge deep run. So looking back on Atlanta, if you're going to play players from this squad, I think Trae Young is kind of a no-brainer, at least for me. I'd play Collins over Capella. I like Bogdan at 6,200, always fine. Herter 5,000. It's a pretty good salary. Same with Hunter, 4,400. So there's going to be some huge value in players like that, in my opinion. Look at Huerter, look at Hunter, look at Trae Young. A little bit of Bogdan, skip everybody else. Collins if you have to. But as far as Atlanta goes, I think that is it for me. So let me pull this up real quick. We'll go and we'll look at the next game, which is going to be Milwaukee-Miami. We spent some time on Milwaukee the other day. Let's see what they look like today. And Milwaukee, Miami. There it is. Oop, man, did that backwards. There it is. All right. And we will start with Milwaukee today. There we have it. The obvious outlier at the top of that, huh? Let's take a quick look here. All right. Things are still looking good. Everybody like me up here in the corner as opposed to down in the middle. I think that maybe works a little better. Okay. All All right, first thing we're going to do on this one, I'm going to look at injuries first, get that out of the way so I know what I'm talking about. Of course, the the injury report of Milwaukee is long. Brook Lopez listed as day-to-day, played the other day, seemed to be okay. I would expect him to play. I don't know. Now, Drew Holiday, same difference, left the game kind of shockingly out of nowhere with a, quote, heel contusion. His status currently also sidelined, not even questionable. So, interestingly, let me refresh that and see how updated that is. Hang with me, it's loading here. Okay. Yeah, Brook Lopez. Let's see what it says. Official injury report, we don't have many details, but sitting out a non-back-to-back this early in the season is concerning. Lopez is 33 with a long injury history, so the Bucks will be cautious with him. Bobby Portis also out. The Bucks are going to need to play Giannis at the 5, which will open the door for Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton, and Jordan Nwora to play more minutes on the wings. So as of right now, I think we've got to say that Brook Lopez is out. Let's read about Drew Holiday and see what that says too. And it says Drew Holiday, heel, will sit out Thursday's game versus the Heat. Now, earlier in the day, it looked like he was going to play, but it says Holiday had an MRI in his heel, which came back clean. That's good news. But the Bucks will hold him out Thursday to be safe. Originally listed as probable, but on top of the heel issue, he's dealing with a thigh contusion as well. Now, Grayson Allen, Jordan Nwora, George Hill, Pat Connaughton are all on the streaming radar for Thursday's 3-game slate. So there's the information that you have on Drew Holiday. Rodney Hood, of course, Bobby Portis, and Semi Ojeleye all out indefinitely. That's fine. Dante DiVincenzo, who is a guy I like, is not ready. So, interesting 6 players there. That could really open up things. It may make you have to play Giannis. Now, some people would say, well, of course you have to play Giannis, but quite a few people don't just because of the salary. But at $11,300, it's only $300 more than Luka, and he averaged more than 4 or 5 fantasy points more than Luka did last year. So it might be a no-brainer where you might just have to have Giannis in like 80% plus of your lineups. Definitely make sure to have some contrarians in case he gets injured, in case something bad happens and he only scores 30 fantasy points. You're going to need some lineups that don't have him, depending on how many you're playing. Now, I try to play the max. I try to play 150 lineups. Not everybody does that. That's totally fine too. And I don't always do that. So there's nights where I'm like, hey, I got 3 lineups, and it is what it is. But that depends on time and other factors. So Milwaukee, wow, this is interesting, because I wonder if Chris Middleton will end up with extra minutes or not. Hang tight with me here. Let's see. Okay. Looking at Giannis. Wow. 33 minutes per game, 32.5% usage. That's slower than Luka. 5.7 value. The dude hits his value. 1.95 fantasy points per minute is insane. Totally crazy. He will likely keep that up this year. You need 51.6 from him in order for him to matter. You're going to get that on a most nights. 64.5 is a boom, and that to me will be more like what he averages. But if you get anything more than 38, this is a worthy play. Now, 38 isn't that many, isn't that much, and I would expect that out of Giannis basically every single night. So to me, Giannis is going to be a no-brainer on this one. He is who he is, multiple-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, champion, yada, yada, yada. You know the drill. The hard thing about Giannis, he's not a pretty player to watch. He's not Steph. He's not floating up these 33-footers and having them go in, and that's crazy and all these things. But dude dominates. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows who he is. I wish he would develop a little more of a jump shot. Everybody says that. There's nothing new under the sun when it comes to Giannis. He is who he is. He is a worthy play at 11.3. That might be cheap for him. So, moving on. Chris Middleton, of course, is my main complaint, but he's priced at it $7,800. I wish he was more like $7,000. 37 fantasy points per game as a second option seems low to me. I really wish that we could get more out of him. Hang with me here. Okay. All right. As a second option, 37.3 is not enough, in my opinion. Do they win games? Certainly they do. Does he contribute to them? Certainly he does. 33 minutes a game, 33.4 minutes per game is more than Giannis. 25% usage, still good. Gets close to value every night on 1.12 fantasy points per minute. But something about Chris, he'll go off for 50, but then sometimes he'll have 16 for no reason. This is not a guy that dominates to the level that he should, in my opinion. He's got the ability, he's got the talent. He's wide open because Giannis is double teamed. In my opinion, he should do more than he does. So do I play Middleton quite a bit? I do, because he's sort of steady. You can get what you're going to get out of him, and his salary isn't always crazy. At $7,800, some people might want to take a flyer. I might have him in a small percentage of my lineups, but I'm not going to go bananas on him. So it is what it is. Now, on this team, with all of the injuries and so forth, Pat Connaughton's going to be kind of a no-brainer. He's going to get extra minutes. Jordan Nwora is going to be a good value at 4,300. Both of those guys at 4,300. You're going to want to put them in a bunch of your lineups because they're going to be great value plays, in my opinion. 7.6 value for Pat Connaughton last year. 7.6. Jordan Nwora 6.7. And Grayson Allen, he's going to be a no-brainer too at 7.3. 7.3 value in Grayson. These three guys are going to be great value plays. Grayson Allen is only 4,100. The other two guys, 4,300. You're going to want these guys in a ton of your lineups if you're asking me. Now, with Rodney Hood out especially also. George Hill is George Hill. He's very successful. He's a veteran. He does what he does. 22 minutes a game last year. You might see that tick up until some of these guys come back. But at 15.9% usage with only a 3.8 value, only a 0.6 fantasy point per minute guy, this is a guy who it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult to get to, in my opinion. Now, he's only 3,600, so just above the minimum on FanDuel. You might have to squeeze him into some lineups just because you have to fill spots. There's other options, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at Jordan Nwora, if you really look at him, fantasy points per minute right now, 3.15. Obviously, only on 9 minutes a game, and that's going to change. Those minutes per game are going to change based just right now on injuries and so forth. So those are your value plays on this team with all the injuries. Connaughton, Nwora, Allen, you're going to want good amounts of them. A little bit of Hill. Thanasis, I think, got 12 minutes the other night. I'm not going that route too much. I don't think Ojale played the other night. I'm not going that route too much. On this one, I'm not totally certain, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I called the blowout against Brooklyn the other day. It wasn't a total blowout, but at the same time, I kind of thought, well, Brooklyn doesn't really have the defense to put up with this team. So there's always the potential, but I think against Miami, it's totally small, and that's going to be because this is going to be a defensive matchup. Let's look and see what's going on in Vegas here. 223.5 total. I mean, actually, that's pretty good. So it looks like, wow. Looks like Milwaukee. That can't be right. Milwaukee's listed as the underdog. It's got to be because of injury. Milwaukee plus 120, Miami minus 143. In my opinion, I think this is much more of a draw than that. I guess that is the money line. Total 110, spread. This is going to be a pretty even match. I do expect Milwaukee to come out. I know that Miami's going to play very slow, and the addition of Kyle Lowry is not going to change that any. Milwaukee will want to play fast, but it is a pace-down spot for them. It's going to be interesting. I guess, to me, 223.5 seems high for this game. I was really expecting that to be more like 208 to 214, something like that. And I guess we'll see kind of what happens. Now, if it does end up in blowout territory, of course, everything changes, but you can't always plan for that. So it is what it is. But that's the line, 223.5. It's just shy of the previous game, which is going to be more of a shootout, I think. So interesting information there. Let's take a look here and see what Miami has to tell us today. Hang with me here. Let's see. No Miami, no Milwaukee. Okay. I gotta figure out a way to lock this too, because what I don't want, I want this to stay as a number. So any insight on how to do that from our Excel heads out there, please let me know. Okay. Where do we start? Let's start with injuries on Miami. That's a good place to always start. according to what I'm seeing here, it looks like Victor Oladipo is the only injured player on the team as of now. I swear earlier there was more. Of course, Oladipo and his knees and legs and hips and all the things that go wrong with that dude. He's another guy that really loves to be injured. You can put him on the list with Porzingis and Gallinari. These guys love to play just in small bursts and then take big breaks. He is, of course, listed as out indefinitely with the knee, but he is the only injured player on this team. So I guess it's going to be a matter of can we find value on the team and guys against the Bucks. That's going to be the thing. Now, like I said, the line 223.5. That's not crazy low. So maybe you'll get some numbers out of these guys. I guess I don't know, but Vegas generally knows more than I do when it comes because they make more money than I do for obvious reasons. Starting, of course, with Jimmy Butler. Love him or hate him. He is who he is. You are going to get what you are going to get out of him. I love him at 9,100, but I think I'm going to go Trae Young in a price range like that before I go Jimmy Butler. You might get a few more stocks out of Jimmy Butler. That's debatable. But we're going to see who he matches up with and kind of how it goes. So 44.9 fantasy points per game last year, 33.6 minutes. So he averages pretty good minutes. Probably get a couple more minutes out of him tonight. 26.6 usage, which isn't insanely high for the star of a team, but hits his value 4.9 almost every night, 1.34 fantasy points per minute. You need 43 out of Jimmy. Jimmy's a guy who I always expect to get me like 37 or 38. It's going to be interesting to whether he can get you that 43.3 against Milwaukee. You'll need 53.5 out of him in order for him to consider him kind of a boom. And 33 or better, you can kind of feel good about the play. Jimmy Butler is who he is. He spent some time on the Timberwolves, and so I feel like I know his game and who he is. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm I'm kind of indifferent. He's a great player for sure, and I did love rooting for him. So, interesting. Let's look at the starting lineup over here. Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, Bam Adebayo. So that's interesting. I guess I thought PJ Tucker was injured earlier today, but it looks like they have him in the starting lineup, and he's definitely not on the injury report. So I don't know. That is what it is. It's going to be an interesting dynamic to see Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler play together with Bam out there. Duncan Robinson, I'm not sure what you're going to get out of him this year. It's going to be interesting, especially with guys like Tyler Hero on the team. Really, really interesting. Let's continue and go down the list here. Bam, second on the team, 41.17 fantasy points per game, 33.5 minutes. 23 usage rate, definitely gets value most nights, 1.23 fantasy points per game. Bam is a guy I like to play. Sometimes you only need 40 out of him to feel successful. 49 is a boom, but if you get anything more than 31, which is very likely, you can feel good about this play at 8,200. 8,200 is definitely the right price for Bam tonight, and I will get him in a good percentage of my lineups now. Some people go, I don't really like Bam, or he's slow, or this or that, and Giannis and all this stuff. He's going to end up in foul trouble. All of that is relevant. You have to understand, when you have Giannis sort of like a steam engine, coming down the court at you, you probably are going to end up in a little bit of foul trouble. So keep your eye on that. Bam is a good defensive player. Bam knows how to play without fouling. Against Giannis, it's going to be difficult. So keep your eye on that. I'm not certain sort of what will happen there, but don't be shocked if he ends up with 2 quick fouls, because if I'm Milwaukee, I'm going at him right away. First 5 plays of the game are at Bam and try to get Giannis to the line, and Bam potentially out of the game for a while. That's a good strategy in my opinion. So let's take a quick look here. Yeah, 1.23 fantasy points per game. Bam's going to be a solid play at 8,200. Kyle Lowry at 7,200. It's going to be really interesting because I know Jimmy likes to walk that ball up the court sometimes. But I think Miami being the home team tonight, I think you're going to see Kyle Lowry try to sort of make his mark and say, here I am. This is who I am on this team. This is who I'm going to be. And he's going to probably jack up quite a few shots in order to try to make himself seem like the guy. 34.8 minutes per game. 21 usage should be higher, in my opinion. Dude hits his value at 5x value. And so he might be worth at 1.03 fantasy points per minute. As long as he's over a fantasy point per minute, that's good in my opinion. But I'm not certain what to expect from him on a new team. As far as the minimum that you're going to need from Kyle Lowry, 36.25 in order for him to be who you need him to be, and 44 is considered a boom. The likelihood that you get that out of Kyle Lowry tonight, in my opinion, is probably pretty good, and his salary of $7,200 is definitely manageable for a kind of an all-star level player. There's so many pay-up options out of these 3 games. It's going to be interesting on whether you can get to him, but it's kind of going to depend on whether you pick and choose between Giannis and Luka, or if you try to stack both of those guys on the same team while also trying to fit one of these other guys in. Here's where you kind of get down. Tyler Hero is another one of these value guys, 30.3 minutes per game off the bench. Has a pretty good usage rate. We'll see how much of that gets cut into with the addition of Kyle Lowry. I know there's no more Dragic and so forth. But value-wise, Hero is a guy who hits his value. Not a one or better fantasy point per minute, 0.87 fantasy points per minute. So for me, that's not good enough out of a guy who says he wants to see his name at the top billing in the conversation with Luka and Trey, which in my opinion, he's just not at 0.87 fantasy points per minute. Dude needs to be a lot more aggressive. Dude needs to make a lot more shots. He needs to get to the line a lot more if he wants to be in the conversation with some of those top players that are in his age bracket. Now, you only need 27.63 points from him in order to consider that successful, but the likelihood, in my opinion, at 0.87 fantasy points per minute that he's going to get there is slim to none, in my opinion. The good news about Tyler Hero is that he's $4,900. So if you need to squeeze him into some spots to fill out some value, that's great. But if I'm looking for value, I'm going back to Milwaukee. That's where I'm going. The value plays on that team with all those injuries are hard to avoid. Now, Tyler Hero as a contrarian option, I can totally see that as an argument. So that might be something to think about, but I'm going to have him maybe in 12 or maybe 10 or less % of my lineups, if at all. So that's something to consider. Going down the line, Duncan Robinson as a starter, this is a guy 31.4 fantasy points per minute at 4,200. He's a real value play. How much usage he gets, you can see the drop down to 16.6 as a usage percentage on a Duncan Robinson as a starter. That's going to make it tough. Now, does he hit value? Yes, he does. 5x value on 0.67 fantasy points per minute, which is not good enough, again, in my opinion. He's a little bit of a specialist. He shoots too many threes, in my opinion. Dude needs to get some free points at the line. I don't know that he has that skill set. Really, it's going to be interesting. 25 is what you need for him to be successful. Now, if you get 25 from him at $4,200, awesome. And again, another contrarian type of play, but I'm probably not going there very much. Maybe about the same as Hero, less than 10% of the time. PJ Tucker is playing. I just avoid PJ Tucker at all costs. If he has a good game, it's like twice a year. He's great at defense and so forth. He's not great at getting 9 stocks. He's not. But his presence is felt on the floor. It's not felt in daily fantasy, even at 3,800. So if you have to on 1 or 2 lineups. But in my opinion, avoid PJ Tucker. I don't know what Markieff Morris's role looks like this year. Here's a guy, 14.2 fantasy points per game last year. Again, another name you like and go, oh, hey, Markieff Morris, maybe I'll play him because maybe he'll make 8 threes in the first half once a year. But the likelihood of any of that is 0 in my opinion, so avoid them. Other than that, on Miami, there's not a whole lot to like here. And so some Jimmy Butler, some Bam, Kyle Lowry if you want, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero as contrarian value plays, but don't expect a lot out of them. Hang with me here and we'll get the next game up. But that's about all I have on Miami. Generally, for me, they're a team I almost universally ignore. Hang with me here. Okay. The next game we're going to talk about is the third and final game. It's Clippers-Warriors. I think, I'm not a huge Clippers fan, so people are going to like to spend some time on this one because it is what it is. But in my opinion, starting with the Clippers, I'm not sure it's going to be this great game. I really am not. So let's take a look here. 10 o'clock Eastern time on this one. I know Kawhi is out, but let's start with injuries either way. Okay, Keon Johnson, sideline day-to-day. Nick Batum, day-to-day. I don't know if he's going to get minutes anyway. Jason Preston, out indefinitely. Kawhi Leonard, questionable to play this season. That's going to be interesting. Ibaka, questionable to start the season. He will come back at some point. We'll see. I'm not sure what's going on with who, but it's going to be interesting for sure. We'll start by talking about Paul George. Fantasy points per game. Man, there's that column F again, huh? I really got to figure out a way to lock that in. And again, I'm sure it's easy. How to do it, no idea. We'll get there. Let's start by talking about Paul George, 42.112 fantasy points per game last year. That's interesting because against the Warriors, I do expect him to put some numbers up because Paul George is kind of a look-at-me type player, at least in my opinion. He seems mild-mannered, but like in a game like this, he'll want to come out. He's desperate to be accepted as a top player, even though in my opinion, he's just below a top player. Everybody in the world will argue against me on that, and that's totally fine. We're allowed our opinions, but he's a guy that can't and won't get it done, at least as far as seasonal basketball goes. Statistically, maybe. There'll be nights where he puts up big numbers. There'll be nights where he puts up a lot of bricks on low percentage shooting also. It is what it is. I'm not a Paul George guy. I never have been. 33.7 minutes per game, 30% usage. In my opinion, if you have a 30% usage, you should be doing better than he does. Now, granted, he's got other players on his team to rely on. His value, he doesn't really get close at 4.3, and 1.25 fantasy points per minute is great. That's fine, but you got to get 47 points out of this guy for him to matter. To me, I fade Paul George. I might get him in 10% of the lineups just in case he goes crazy and makes 11 threes. It is what it is. He can do it. Will he do it? Probably not. Against the Warriors, he'll have some opportunity. That'll be a pace-up spot for him. But for me, Paul George, not really interested. Marcus Morris in this one, again, Kawhi injured, but Marcus Morris, 26.4 minutes per game on 20% usage. Nothing there that's jumping out. I mean, you got to get almost 30 points from him on 0.82 fantasy points per minute. To me, he's a no-go. There's only, let me see, what do we have on this team that is even interesting to me? Well, let's see. Hartenstein, Kennard, no. I mean, just looking at these guys, it's gonna be interesting. Eric Bledsoe is kind of an X factor. We'll see what you get out of him last year. 29.7 minutes per game. His usage is lower than it needs to be. He does hit value, but at only 0.8 fantasy points per minute. This isn't the guy you can rest your team on. Is he going to have a good night? I'm not sure. It's hard to say because Bledsoe's one of those guys that just historically cannot lead his team in the way that he needs to. I like Reggie Jackson in this spot. They paid him, and so we'll see what happens. But at 23 minutes a game last year, he's going to need to get more like 29 minutes per game this year in order to matter at 0.94 minutes per or fantasy points per minute. You're going to need to get 28 fantasy points for him to matter. Let's see here. 21.69 fantasy points per game last year. You're going to need to see him get closer to 30, at least for what they paid him. Zubats is an interesting guy because here's a guy last year that got 22.3 minutes per game. If this dude gets 32 to 34 minutes per game, I could definitely expect to get a lot out of him. And at $4,200, he's going to be a top play as far as value goes. It's going to be very interesting, especially now with the sort of multiple positions that some of these other players could play. How much Zubats can you get in? Dude hits his value almost every night at 0.93 fantasy points per minute is pretty good. If he's getting 10 or 12 more minutes and there's no Kawhi Leonard, you can expect him to see the ball more, which means that you can expect his usage to go up and his minutes to go up. Is likely to hit value. Here's a guy where you only need 25 fantasy points for him, and if he's getting 32 to 34 minutes at 0.93, likelihood that he's going to hit that value is very high, especially considering you only need 29 points for him to boom. So play a lot of Zubats tonight. He's chalky chalk. And I know we talk a lot about chalky chalk, and playing some chalk you have to, avoiding some chalk you have to. So it's really a matter of who you're going to want to play. Those three value plays on Milwaukee are going to eat up a bunch of your lineup as well as everybody else's. You hope you get the one of those three guys that has a low ownership, and then go from there. And but to me, Ivica Zubac, he's going to be chalk tonight. So on this team, play your Paul George. For me, it's going to be less than 10%. I expect his ownership to be somewhere between 20 and 30%. Play your Reggie Jackson, low ownership, again, somewhere between 10 and 15%. Zubac, I'm going to play probably 40% Zubac, and maybe that's my own silliness, but for me, a guy like this who used to get 22 minutes a game but is going to get 32 to 34 minutes per game now, kind of a no-brainer. Marcus Morris can fill gaps, but for me, I'm not going too much that route, especially at $5,400. I like him a lot more at like $4,400. But for me, I'm going to probably fade a lot of Clippers tonight, and hopefully that will help me ownership-wise. Let me go to the Warriors next, and then we'll wrap up. Let's see here. Forgive my clicking. All right, pulling up the Warriors. Everyone loves Steph, myself included, to some extent. I also sort of want to kick him down a mountain, but some of that just has to do with his, sort of. He's one of these guys that just has the natural ability to be successful at whatever he does, which is fun, but also kind of annoying because you want this guy to miss some. Otherwise, it's boring. During 2016, I thought, man, this guy's boring, and I rooted hard against him. That being said, at 53 fantasy points per minute on a $10,000 salary, you're going to want to get to some Steph for sure. 34.2 minutes per game. This probably won't be a blowout. His usage rate is high, 34.8. He always hits his value, 5.3 on 1.55 fantasy points per minute. That's higher than Luka. You need 47 out of him. The hard part on Steph, again, is that 90% of his fantasy points comes from scoring. So unless, of course, he had that triple-double the other night. The good news on that was that he was sort of sucking it up across the board otherwise. So is that going to happen every night? No. If he makes 9 threes, don't expect him to have a triple-double. It is what it is. That's kind of the takeoff. Dude might have 27 points, but only 33 fantasy points. So we'll see kind of what happens on this. The rotations, of course. This is not 2016 Warriors. The team is different. No Klay Thompson. It is what it is. 46.75 is what you're going to need out of him. On a 58 would be his boom. Can he do it? Yes. Will he do it? You need at least 35 from him in order to consider him not a bust. You're probably going to get there. Looking at Draymond, I don't like paying $7,100 for Draymond. That seems like way too high, especially considering his proclivity for foul trouble. 31 minutes per game is good with a low usage of 13. So I'm not going there that much on only a 3 value and 0.72 fantasy points per minute. You need 36 out of Draymond for him to matter. For me, I'm fading Draymond all night long. I'm also probably going to fade Wiggins, although I probably will fit him in maybe 8 to 12% of my lineups. 22 fantasy points per game? Maybe not. 30. The minutes are there. The usage is there. The value is not at 0.69 fantasy points per minute. You got to get 35 out of him. 42 to boom. The likelihood of that, no matter who they're playing, slim to none. It appeared the other night that Jordan Poole has taken a step forward in his game, and depending on his minutes, which need to be more than last year's 19.4, it seems to me like you're going to have to fit him in 15 or 20% of your lineups just to see what happens. His usage is high at 25%. That's second on the team right now, so that's actually really good. He hits value, 1.44 fantasy points per minute so far. You need 28 out of him. But here's the deal. He's only 5,200, so I'm definitely going to play some Jordan Poole. I think a lot of people will. You might call him chalk tonight, although I don't expect him necessarily to have the same kind of night he had the other night. The other guy who I believe in, who other people don't know or didn't know, was Nemanja Bjelica. The reason, of course, I'm familiar with him is that he was a Timberwolf for so many years, and we love us some Bjelica here in Minnesota. So to see him go sucked, but 36.2 fantasy points per game so far, pretty awesome. 16.1 minutes per game. That's not correct. That's probably gonna be more like 28 minutes per game. At $4,800, you've got to have some Bjelica, especially considering he's gonna kind of be de facto chalk after his performance the other night. Can he keep it up? I didn't pay that much attention to him when it came to Sacramento, but I hope to. I hope that he ends up in a lot of rotations. I hope he gets a ton of minutes. Dude hits his value. Fantasy points per minute right now, 2.25. Insane. He needs 27 to matter, 32 to boom. Is he going to get it? I think the likelihood is yes. So play a bunch of Bjelica. I'm going to have him in like 35% of my lineups, and that's going to be awesome. Let's look at the injuries here for Golden State. I think I skipped that. Okay. Kuminga will be reevaluated tomorrow, but he is out. Wiseman, of course, out till the 1st. Klay Thompson, of course, Christmas-ish. That's kind of where they're expecting that. We'll see. I hope dude's legs can hang out. Let's see. Otto Porter. You could get to a little Otto Porter. I like his salary, $4,000. He definitely has the ability, but I don't know if he'll get the minutes. I don't know if he can produce, especially if Bjelica has the ball in his hands a lot. Andre Iguodala got more minutes than I expected him to. I don't expect that to be every single night, although I do expect Steve Kerr to kind of have some reminiscence of the player he used to be and maybe overplay him because of his sort of recency bias. Kevon Looney will get some rotations. I don't ever play him. Juan Toscano-Anderson might have 1 or 2 good games a year, so I don't play him either. The Warriors is one of these teams where they spread around the ball a lot, and so generally speaking, it's one of those things where it's like just avoid the Warriors outside of Steph and a little bit of Draymond. Tonight, I'm going to look at Steph, no Draymond. I'm definitely going to have some Jordan Poole and Bjelica in this one, maybe 5 to 10% of Otto Porter just for the heck of it, and everybody else can go take a hike. It looks like Golden State's total lineup, 227.5 on this game. That is the highest of the night. So definitely get as much Steph as you can, get as much Jordan Poole as you can, get as much Bjelica as you can, and everybody else can take a taxi. So it's one of these things where, it is what it is. Play your gut, play the best players that you can think of that will have the lowest ownership. I'm loving those 3 guys out in Milwaukee. Giannis and Luka are obvious pay-ups. Steph is going to be good, but it's going to be an interesting night. I love these sort of small game slates. It really sort of puts in perspective what you may or may not have to do to win, and hopefully you hit. I've said it before. My buddy who took down 70 grand at one time had Ron Baker in his lineup, and he was the only one that did, and that is why he won. So it is what it is. Make sure you make informed decisions. Nothing I've said here is anything other than my own opinion. So don't bank on any of it. I hope I'm able to offer you some good advice, but definitely use your thinking while you're taking it, and go from there. Other than that, you guys, I don't have a lot more from you. This has been an interesting first week of basketball for me. I've never done this streaming thing. I've been playing DFS since 2013, so I know a lot about DFS. I hope I bring you some valuable information. The week has been very interesting. There's been a lot of growing pains on the stream, having to cut short, having the music too loud, having the model not quite ready. Learning how to talk to nobody is very interesting. It is what it is. So we'll do better. The thing will get better. The model will get better. The information will get better as we get more of it. And going forward, hopefully, it is what it is. So hang with me real quick here. There I am. Oh, there we go. It's been a blast, you guys. I spent more time talking about 3 games than I think I planned to, which is fun. I love doing it, and I hope to continue to bring you guys content. It's been a really good time. I hope that we see some success in the future, and even if we don't, I love doing it because I'm going to do it anyway. So other than that, I think that's all I got from you guys. Have fun watching tonight. Hit me up again at Jon B 1 DFS or at Jon Bone DFS on Twitter, and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, all that stuff, and we'll bring you more content as we have it. Other than that, have a good night, you guys.